Welcome back to the sanctuary of the untold, the only corner of the digital universe where we slow the spin of headlines just long enough to hear the pulse that beats beneath them. You are watching Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Out here, history isn't etched in ink, it is carved in pauses between words, in half-smiles that linger too long, in the truths that never quite make it into the statement but hover, undeniable, in the air. Tonight, our compass points to Madrid, where a red carpet became an arena, and one sentence shifted the conversation from cinema to soul. We often imagine premieres as glittering rituals, polished, rehearsed, and safe. Yet every once in a very long while, the choreography dissolves, and the human story steps forward uninvited. The Gala of El Turco did not merely unveil a film, it exposed a feeling. Under the grand arches of a historic venue, with marble whispering of legacy and lights blurring into constellations, the star of the night, Gökberk Yildirim, strode toward the microphones with the composure of a man at the pinnacle of his craft. Spain welcomed him like an heir returning home. This was meant to be a victory lap. It became a confession without confessing a thing. Madrid has earned its place as a premier stage. A city where old stones hold secrets and new cameras chase the future. For El Turco, stakes rose like the breath of a crowd before a curtain lifts. It wasn't just a project for Gökberk, it was the chapter that promised to write his name in a larger alphabet. The guest list read like a directory of European power and artistry. The carpet glowed crimson beneath tuxedos and couture, and the flashbulbs turned the night into a flicker of captured seconds. Everything moved with mechanical perfection. Questions about directing choices, training regimens, language preparation, until one question cut across the rhythm like a blade through silk. It wasn't a scandal-seeking jab or a prying finger into the past. It sounded almost gentle, the kind of query a philosopher might ask while staring out a rain-slick window. A reporter leaned forward, voice steady against the frenzy, and asked, "Is there any emotion you still carry from then to now?" In the noise-streaked chaos of a premiere, most stars deflect. They cite gratitude, talk about growth, pivot to the film, and keep the gears turning. But that night, Gökberk did not pivot. Witnesses say he paused, not with confusion, but with a faraway focus, like someone hearing a song from a decade ago through a wall. He looked beyond the cameras, past the lights, to a point that belonged only to him. The bubble around him tightened. Then he spoke, and the city seemed to hold its breath. He didn't name anyone. He didn't trace dates, he didn't outline memories. He offered a line that landed with the weight of something lived. He said, "Some encounters leave a mark you don't erase. Time doesn't wash it away, it just changes what the mark means." In that instant, the premiere turned into a mirror. No bravado. No tidy closure. Just the understanding that a heart remembers, even when it moves forward. He went on, each word measured like stones laid in a path. "Who I am today exists because of what I felt before. Denying it would be easy, but being truthful is harder. I am not at war with what has passed. I accept it." The tone wasn't sorry, and it wasn't triumphant. It was steady, reflective, almost tender. The room rearranged itself around his honesty. No names traveled on the air. Yet in the grammar of celebrity, silence often provides the subject of the sentence. Those who have followed Gökberk's journey didn't need a label. As the words "mark," "truthful," and "accept" drifted through the space, the collective memory of the fandom summoned a single face, Cemre Arda. Long before El Turco, their partnership on a series had glowed so fiercely that lines between fiction and reality flickered. The rumors endured, always almost confirmed yet never named. The night in Madrid didn't fill in the blank, it invited the world to do it for him. Pens scrambled. Cameras zoomed. The headline wrote itself. A story about the past eclipsing the present, about a love everyone thinks they remember. We have to pause here and ask you, the heartbeat of Turkish Spotlight Secrets, if you were Cemre, watching this unfold from somewhere quiet, what would you feel? Would you accept the tenderness in his words as a tribute to something that shaped you both, or would you feel exposed by the millions of interpretations summoned by a single sentence? Tell us what you think below. And if conversations like these speak to you, stories where fame and feeling collide, make sure you're subscribed to Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Your presence turns these stories into more than noise, it turns them into community. Inside that gilded venue, reactions split like light through crystal. Some guests called it maturity, a man who understands that the past is a foundation, not a prison. This isn't drama, one attendee murmured. It's acceptance. Another voice added with quiet conviction, people who fight the past stay silent. People who make peace with it can finally speak. Not everyone agreed. There were those who bristled at the timing, arguing that personal echoes should not thunder over the work of hundreds whose sweat made the film possible. They accused the moment of inviting a circus onto the temple steps of cinema. Yet gossip scribes saw coherence in the calmness. "I am not in conflict with the past" sounded less like a revelation and more like a ceasefire signed within. No smoke. No fire. Just a door being closed with respect on the other side. Still, the most piercing part of this story happened far from Madrid's marble and velvet. It happened in the space where an answer might have been. Days went by, and Cemre Arda did not post a lyric, did not share a photo, did not let a friend whisper something for her. She offered nothing, and that nothing roared. In a world where reaction fuels the machine, her silence was a thesis. It didn't diminish his words, it reframed them. Some saw it as sovereignty, a refusal to be drafted as a character in someone else's scene. Others saw a tenderness too raw to touch. Either way, the absence of reply became its own kind of language. It said, "I'm not playing on this stage. My life is not a sequel." What came next was inevitable. Critics applauded the visual sweep of El Turco and praised the ambition of its storytelling, but the night's soft-spoken declaration devoured the oxygen of the coverage. A film critic sighed in print, "We watched a good movie," and discussed a single line. The press began a tug-of-war over words. Was it a confession? Was it merely sincerity in a rare uncynical moment? Commentators wrestled with a question that never quite resolves. When we witness honesty, do we accept it as truth, or do we demand a headline it was never meant to hold? And then there was timing. Was it coincidence? Or did Gökberk feel compelled to place his history in order before stepping forward into a grander frame? One editor, seasoned by many cycles of fame, noted, "Before big chapters, people tend to settle their unfinished sentences." Maybe he wasn't inviting us in. Maybe he was quietly closing a door. Online, the echoes kept multiplying. Those who spoke for Cemre, fans, writers, readers between lines, split into camps. Dignity versus distance, strength versus incomplete healing. Threads unraveled into debates, and everywhere the Madrid moment was referenced, it gathered new shades. Interviewers circled back to that sentence regardless of context, and every interpretation became a Rorschach test. The question followed him like a shadow: did you confess, or did you simply admit that you were shaped? And in the center of the storm, the facts refused to solidify. There were no declarations. There were only fragments, phrases, glances, silences, rearranged again and again into stories that served the teller as much as the truth. By the time the gala lights cooled and the carpets were rolled into quiet, what lingered wasn't simply a premiere. It was an atmosphere, a resonance. The way Gökberk chose his words, heavy with implication but clean of names, and the way Cemre chose the gravity of stillness over any form of reply, braided a narrative stronger than any rumor. Perhaps El Turco will be remembered on two levels, as a work of cinema that reached for something grand, and as a case study in the power of understatement. One sentence, hundreds of headlines. One silence, a counterpoint louder than applause. And this is what we will keep doing here on Turkish Spotlight Secrets, watching the lines inches beyond the spotlight, listening for the truth that lives in what isn't said, decoding the choreography of distance. In that geometry of relationships, the space between two people is so often measured by the words they choose not to speak. If you felt the pull of this story, if you sensed in it a reflection of your own past marks and quiet closures, tap subscribe, share your thoughts below, and consider joining our inner circle by clicking the join button. Your support is how we keep the lamps on and the questions brave. Let's return, one last time, to that Madrid instant. The venue held grandeur like a memory, and he walked into it wearing certainty like a tailored suit. He was asked not about stunts or scenes, but about the afterlife of feeling. He could have swerved. He didn't. He placed a sentence on the table, simple and unadorned. Some encounters leave marks that time doesn't erase, it only alters their meaning. He acknowledged that the present self is built from the ruins and reliquaries of yesterday, from tenderness and fracture alike. He said, without pressing for tears or forgiveness, that acceptance is a quiet room in a loud city. And by stepping into that room, he allowed us to glimpse how fame complicates remembrance. A star does not stop being human when the cameras arrive. Often, that is when their humanity becomes most fragile. For years, the story most of us told ourselves about Gökberk and Cemre carried mystery like perfume, familiar yet always just out of reach. That night did not decode the past, it clarified the present. He will carry what shaped him without fighting it. She will guard what shaped her without explaining it. And the world that watches will keep reading a sentence that neither of them is obliged to finish. Maybe that is the most honest ending two people can give the public, not closure, but coherence. Not a promise, but a boundary. As the promotional tour continued, the same inquiry kept looping. What did he mean? Will she respond? The answers stayed precisely where they began, in the realm of interpretation. Fans in Madrid, in Istanbul, in Rome and Paris and beyond, added their brushstrokes to the mural. Meanwhile, the film stood on its own legs, and in quiet moments after screenings, a few attendees confessed to friends, the movie was good. And I can't stop thinking about that sentence. A paradox, perfectly modern, art and life in a tight embrace, neither willing to step aside. If you've been with us from the first word of tonight's tale, you already know how we close. We respect the quiet as much as we respect the applause. We honor the mark without demanding it fade. From our studio to your screen, thank you for stepping into this reflection with Turkish Spotlight Secrets. Keep your heart open to stories that live between words. Subscribe if you haven't yet. Consider joining to support the work it takes to research, verify, and bring you these narratives with care. And as you go, carry this thought. Sometimes the bravest thing a person can do is tell the truth gently, and sometimes the bravest thing another can do is say absolutely nothing at all. We'll be here, watching, listening, and decoding. Because in this story, the silence is still speaking, and somehow, we can all hear it.